Ever wondered why your fragrance doesn't smell the same? I feel the same about this one, though I really love this even now, but I know that it has changed over the years. Hi, I'm Lavish, founder of Scentira. Today we are going to deep dive into a topic that I always wanted to discuss, but I took my time because I wanted to research it really well, and I talked to a lot of people who are into fragrance industry, not just as perfumers but in a lot of other capacities. And today we are going to talk about and answer a few questions such as why your fragrance doesn't smell the same, why fragrances are reformulated, how a fragrance is made, and what are some aspects of safety that are taken into consideration while manufacturing a perfume. These are some topics that are not covered really well on YouTube, I feel, because when I sat down to research, I could not find a lot of content. That is why I had to resort to talking to people who are into this industry. And this is my attempt to bridging that gap, and hopefully you will find some valuable insights. And if you have any questions, any follow-up questions or your insights, please do let me know in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's get started. Now let's first understand how a fragrance is made, right? For a layman, we buy perfumes from a brand, let's say Gucci, Versace, right? But they are not the ones who are making the perfume. They are the ones who conceptualize, who, design that perfume. But the perfume is actually made by a fragrance house. Now, what are fragrance houses? These are some 5-6 companies mostly that are producing all the perfumes in the entire world. Most of them are from Europe, and to name a few, it is Givaudan, DSM, Firmenich, Main, etc. What happens is that a brand goes to this fragrance house, they will present their idea. Let's say Dior Sauvage, right? Dior would go to the fragrance house and tell them what kind of fragrance they want to make. And then the fragrance house will, make different compositions. And then there's of course a very long process of tests and trials before they finally come down to a formulation. And that formulation is actually owned by the fragrance house, and the ready fragrance is given to Dior to sell, right? That is how this industry works for most of the big brands. Now, the next thing that you need to understand is what are fragrances made of. See, fragrances are consist of two things mostly. One is your natural ingredients, one is your synthetic ingredients. For naturals, let's say a rose oil, a sandalwood oil, all these raw materials which are found naturally are extracted are called natural ingredients. And then there's a secondary component which is what we call synthetic molecules. Now these are some molecules that are developed by these fragrance houses, right, and put into the fragrance either to increase its projection, longevity, or to mimic a certain fragrance or smell that is not available naturally, either because it is in shortage, it is expensive, or it does not exist at all. Now, to give you an example, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this fragrance brand called Guerlain, and one of the most popular fragrances is Guerlain's Vetiver. Now, it is a very beautiful fragrance and very difficult to copy. Now, the reason is because it comprises of a molecule called, I hope I'm taking the name correctly, it is called Vertofix core. Now, this is a proprietary molecule developed by a fragrance house called IFRA, right? And that is what gives it the projection, the long lasting, and also that woody feel. And that is the reason nobody has been able to perfectly clone either Terry d'Hermes or Guerlain's Vetiver. These are some fragrances, like there's a reason why they're so popular. Now, another example is Hermes H24 Herbs and Vibes. Now, this is a fragrance that was, I think, launched last year. I really like it. It has a very cooling effect, very long-lasting cooling effect. And when I read about it, I realized that it has a proprietary molecule produced by a company called, or a fragrance house called Main, and it is called Fizz Cool. Now, that is what it gives it that cooling effect without that menthol-like taste. Now you can imagine the kind of research that would go into developing one molecule, which is what makes the fragrance so unique and, so to say, uncopyable, if that's a word. Now there's always a debate going on between naturals versus synthetic ingredients. I feel the debate is pointless because they work in tandem. You can't really make a great perfume entirely naturally for many reasons. One, it can get very expensive. Second, it may not be very environmentally sustainable, our biodiversity, be it plants, be it animals, and that is why a lot of ingredients like musk, civet, these are banned from perfumery, right? So that is where the synthetic compounds come into place, that is where the fragrance houses come into place. They will develop that molecule so that it can closely mimic the natural ingredient, which makes the fragrance smell similar to what it would be if it was naturals. It would give it a lot more projection, a lot, like everyone craves for long lasting perfumes. Mostly synthetics do that job, and it makes it cost effective for the average consumer to experience these fragrances. So I feel synthetics should be given that due respect, and it is given due respect in the perfumery circuit. I feel people who understand how things are, or how fragrances are made, they understand the value of it. Billions of dollars is getting invested into this industry. All these major fragrance houses, they put in so much effort, so much research, so much time, so much money to finally come to a molecule that smells very close to the natural thing. And that is why they patent it as well. Now that you understand what fragrances are made of and how they are made, you will understand why fragrances are reformulated. Now, just before that, I would like to bring into another entity into picture, which is called IFRA. It is basically International Fragrance Association, which was established long time back. Their job is to test different ingredients, find if there's any ingredient which is either harmful to the skin or the person who's wearing it, or if it endangers any kind of biodiversity, right? And what they will do is they will publish a list every year of certain ingredients. Either they are banned to be used now, or they have a maximum capping of the percentage they can use in a certain perfume. Now what happens as an effect is that your favorite fragrance, which let's say used that ingredient either in a certain quantity, is now either getting banned, right? Or the percentage which was required to give it that effect, that has been reduced, right? As a result, the perfumers are forced to either look for alternatives, right? And that is again when the fragrance houses come into the picture. They will try to create a molecule that complies with the new regulations, so that your favorite fragrance can still be experienced by you, right? But of course, as we know, fragrances get reformulated and they don't smell the same, because a lot of times you can't really make the same fragrance with other ingredients or with reduced dosage of certain ingredients. And that is basically the reason why fragrances don't smell the same over years, right? I think there must be other reasons which I'm not aware about, but this is one of the major factors which affect a fragrance formulation. Now, why should all this matter to you? My simple reason of making this video was to make you understand why reformulation is not always bad. Of course, we miss our fragrances, we miss the kind of projection maybe we got with those fragrances. But at the end of the day, we wear fragrances because we enjoy, wearing it. And if it's not safe, then what's the point of that enjoyment, right? Either it's not safe for us or for the planet. I'm very cautious of trying a new fragrance from a new brand. I would not wear it on my skin because I'm not sure if they're compliant with all these regulations, right? In the smaller picture, this doesn't matter. You don't really feel if it's doing something to you. But from what I've heard, from what I understand with talking to so many experts, they tell you that fragrances can have a lasting damaging effect if you're wearing something which you should not be. So that is why I also appreciate, or I understand the value or the pricing of certain fragrances, right? If you can imagine the kind of process, the pain that these fragrance houses and brands go through to be compliant with these regulations, you would not be hesitant paying the price that these brands demand. So my conclusion with all this information and understanding that I have got, and hopefully you have got after watching this, is that there are so many options in the market, be it your Middle Eastern fragrances, designer or niche. You buy what suits you, what suits your budget and what you enjoy wearing. As long as these 2-3 goals are being met, I think you're good to go. Now you also know what goes behind the scenes while your favorite fragrances are made. And next time, if you find a fragrance different from what you remember, you know what could be one of the reasons. I always suggest try a fragrance, be it at the mall, though that's not always the best way, or get a decant from us or anywhere else, but always try a fragrance before you commit to a full bottle. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, you learned a few things, and if there's any follow-up questions or any other video recommendations, do drop them below in the comments, and do hit the like button if you actually liked it, and subscribe to the channel for more such informative and amazing content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.